Hi everybody, this is Lisa Haven, and I stumbled across rather exciting documents. But here's our headline: CIA document or documents on Noah's Ark, and you will be floored by what they contain. So as I was diving through the Black Vault, who actually through the Freedom of Information Act, they go and they request, government manuals and all kinds of various information from these different, from the NSA, from the CIA, from the FBI, from any government agency, and he gets all this stuff together and he puts it on this website. This is why I love it. But as I was diving through that, I came across documents that the CIA turned in about an in-depth study done on Noah's Ark and pictures that they had taken of the area. Now, the picture you actually see here above, this one, this was taken in 1960 and published, or I don't know if it was taken in 1960, but it was published in Life magazine in 1960 with the headline Noah's Ark ? Now, I'll get into this a little bit later, but here you can see it right here, but I found it rather interesting. But let's just first dive into those CIA docs. Okay, so here we are on Black Vault, Noah's Ark, CIA documents. And as you can see right here, this is from the CIA, Washington, D.C., and it says, Mr. John Greenwald, who is the one that owns the Black Vault. It says, this is in response to your April 10th, 2014 Freedom of Information Act request, where he requested all documents about Noah's Ark. Our records show that we conducted a search on behalf of an earlier request for records pertaining to the subject of your request. Therefore, we are enclosing 12 separate documents, all different. Some are news reports, some are studies, some are clips. They're just all different kinds of things, but we're going to go through them. And it's about 49 pages in response to his request. Now, here is one of the first things I want to show you, and this is Executive Order to Release Crucial CIA photos. And what are those photos that they're talking about? Lo and behold, one of them, as you're going to see in here below, is a picture of Noah's Ark that they supposedly took on Mount Ararat. And it's just fascinating. And what I also find quite disturbing is on this far left-hand side, you can see here that they cut it off. Why they cut it off? Probably because of the information it contains. But as you can see here, there's a conversation going on about classified photos, and it's kind of going to be difficult to read because it's cut off, but there was a wide blah, blah, blah CIA photo taken from aerial, and it was ark-shaped object, an ark-shaped object that they supposedly found in this particular photo. It goes on to say, okay, there we go. It goes on to say up here that the photo was basically mistakenly taken. It says, the U.S. wanted to get pictures of the Soviet troop movements and the Soviet nuclear missile site 40 miles to the east of Mount Ararat. Okay, according to the rumor, when I was at West Point, one of the military reconnaissance satellites flying over the, and it pauses right there, the Soviet-Turkish border, taking pictures of top secret Soviet missile site on the Soviet border, has captured something else instead, he said. Someone accidentally turned on the camera a few seconds early, and the satellite picked up a large object jutting out of the ice cap located about 13,000 foot level on the north face of Mount Ararat. The rumor was the object was man-made, constructed of wood, and over 400 feet in estimated length. That is your Noah's Ark. The photo was the subject of a CBS television primetime 2-hour special aired on February 20th in 1993, The Incredible Discovery of Noah's Ark. On that show, several retired military pilots, several, not just one, claimed that the Pentagon had quality photos of the object. It goes on to say right here, there have been numerous attempts in the past to discover Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat, including publicized expeditions unorganized or organized by the United States astronaut Jim Irving. None of these expeditions produced any conclusive results. What convinced Taylor as to the authenticity of the rumored photo was the confirmation he received from one of the esteemed names of the U.S. intelligence community, and that's George A. Carver. And I'm going to show you this as well. Junior Carver served as deputy for national intelligence to two former CIA directors, and as the senior intelligence officer in NATO. He is the only person in the history of the CIA to be twice awarded a Distinguished Intelligence Medal. Now, this guy has got many credentials, and there is a dialogue that happened that upticks suspicions because George A. Carver said these things. And here's what it says. Taylor met Dr. Carver at a round table meeting held on March 11, 1993 in Palm Beach, Florida. In the question and answer session following Carver's speech, Taylor asked him if he had any comments on the Ararat photo. Okay, and Carver said, I do not remember at the time. I do, remember at the time there were some pictures taken. Now, before I get into this, let me show you kind of that dialogue that he's talking about, if it will let me. All right, here it is. A transcript from the tape by Palm Beach Roundtable. This was the Q&A with Dr. Carver. And here's the background. Dr. Carver is considered to be America's foremost authority on intelligence and security. He served as deputy for national intelligence for two former directors of the CIA, as well as senior U.S. intelligence officer in NATO. Okay, we kind of went over his medals. Title of his speech, we cannot afford surprises, we must be prepared. And in a Q&A, here's the direct dialogue between Taylor and Dr. Carver. Taylor says, Dr. Carver, I'm a West Point graduate, and while I was a cadet at the academy in 1973, there was a strong rumor going around that one of the military spy satellites was flying down the Russia-Turkish corridor, taking photographs of a Soviet missile site, and apparently accidentally took photographs of the Turkish side of a large wooden object which appeared to be a ship stuck in a glacier about 14,000 feet on Mount Ararat. Strong rumors going around the academy at that time was that apparently our intelligence people at the CIA might have classified photographs of Noah's Ark, and I was wondering if you had any comments about that. And then the audience laughs. But then his response is stunning. And Dr. Carver says, remember his credentials. He says, well, I don't recall the CIA working on Noah's Ark, but I do remember that at the time there were some pictures taken and there were clear indications that there was something up on Mount Ararat, which was rather strange. There was various archaeological expeditions that were mounted. The Turkish government was not too thrilled about supporting them, but it was getting into an area that was politically dicey from the Turks' point of view. But there is but one of the indications, I haven't been up there. I don't think anyone has, but it certainly has eyebrow lifting. And it was certainly another indication that despite its splendor as a work of poetry, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, might not be all that bad as history also. And then Taylor says, thank you, sir. And I'm assuming that the audience remained quiet at that point. But this was the actual transcript that is talked about right here in this clip. And it just expands or tells basically the same thing here. And it says Frank, and I can't say Calufo, a fellow at the Center of Strategic and International Studies who had worked with Mr. Carver, specifically stated that Carver was very excited about the Ararat anomaly. It goes on to say that the TDN has learned that a senior member of the U.S. Congress is now aware of the issue, and one of his top aides reportedly got in touch with the CIA and the White House, as well as the National Security Council, for inclusion of such CIA photos within the expected presidential directive. A source close to the CIA confirmed for TDN that the directive might be signed soon by Clinton. Yet the White House refrained, I wonder why they would refrain from confirming or denying what Mr. Carver had said. And they said that the White House, when asked, they said that they weren't authorized to talk to the press on that issue. Interesting. Now, if they didn't have something to hide, why wouldn't they just say no? Okay, that's my question. Okay, I mean, it's something to think about. Okay, so here's the next one, and this just basically says that they have consistently denied requests for release of this imagery, talking about the photo that Mr. Carver referenced, due to the classification and consideration. They also said that they haven't been doing, studies or things underway on that. But why would they hide the photos? Now, this next one is a request made by Charles Aaron of the Share Corporation. I might be Shira or something, butchering that. But he requests for these photos and a video which were taken of the area reportedly. And so he's asking the director of the OIA for that information, in which the OIA actually gives a response. They said, we have looked at the existing imagery dated between these dates, notice they date it, of Mount Ararat, and are unable to confirm the existence of the ark or its proposed location as depicted in the video and the letter. The letter's description of two possible locations was not sufficient to detail to be useful. And notice this has NOFORN. Here's another, the next one, NOFORN. And that basically means it's not for foreign nationals. When they classify things, you have to be a domestic citizen. But it was confidential. And why they have to make these confidential is a good question. But here is the request from Aaron. Basically, received request to locate Noah's Ark, and then included two maps, a rendition of Noah's Ark, and a video of Mount Ararat. Search NDS for imagery of Mount Ararat. Search imagery for area of interest shown in the video. And that's 1992 in May, and then June 1992. They drafted all this information together for the OIA, and they requested information from the OIA, which they did not provide assistance, which it states there. And the OIA is basically the Office of Imagery Analysis. That's what that is. And this is the official directive on it. And here's what it says. This is in response to your questions about the imagery analysis, okay? And here's what they say. The Office of Imagery Analysis, the OIA, National Photographic Interpretation Center, has no active project searching imagery of Mount Ararat, Turkey, for evidence of Noah's Ark. So in other words, they're not doing an investigation of it at that time. And they also goes on to say, we have responded to ad hoc requests from the DCI's office on this topic in the past at the direction of DCI Gates, OIA 1992 search for the Ark imagery routinely collected of the Mount Ararat area between November 1990 and January 1992. The search revealed nothing conclusive, only two areas of apparent rock formations protruding through existing now snow and ice. So apparently the OIA, Office of Imagery, So apparently the OIA, the Office of Imagery Analysis, is denying that they have any conclusive photos or studied. And they also go on to say that a thorough search on number 4 here of the area is basically impossible because it's at 15,000 foot elevation and covered with snow and ice. That kind of gives you an idea. Now, here is another request about Noah's Ark. And this is just a part. Jane Anders asked me last night. This is just an inquiry And then in response to an inquiry, it said that Lackman turned down Dwayne Andrews' request to declassify imagery of Noah's Ark for a TV production, because he was doing a TV show on Noah's Ark and he wanted information on that, and they refused to give him the information. Now, we know the OIA doesn't have it, but here is a request from another department and they turned him down. And, basically this means if they're denying to unclassify something, it means they do have something. Now, this is just another letter requesting information from Gates, and that's the office of the CIA. And scrolling down a little bit, here's another request, but for the time frame of 1960 to 1971, which basically they say as a result, it is still they're still not giving them the information because it hasn't been unclassified yet. So in other words, the information is still classified. Okay, here's another request from the government, and it says CBS and Sun International Pictures are producing a special called The Secrets of Noah Ark, scheduling to air in September. The producers have gathered a number of indications that the U.S. intelligence services are in possession of pictorial evidence that the Ark or parts of it still exist. Now, let me just say something. If all these people are requesting documentation from these government sources, some have claimed they didn't have it, and others have claimed that these are classified documentations, then something has to be going on. There's lots of different sources requesting this. And what I want to show you is this is titled, and some of these pages are missing, obviously. So see the 3 at the bottom of here? We don't have 1 and 2. And then here it skips from 3 to 5. So where is page 4? I don't know. But here's some of the evidence that they claim the government has. And some examples are the late astronaut Colonel James Irvin said he personally saw the Air Force file on Mount Ararat, Noah's Ark, but it is not known if he is allowed to thoroughly review its contents. Another one, there were numerous sightings by Air Force pilot during World War II. Some photographs were taken and turned over to Air Force superiors for processing. A third one, I think it's Jorge Schweitzhammer, an Air Force pilot stationed in Turkey during the late 1950s, saw it while reconnaissance work. He described it as a big, rectangular, huge, box-like car, man-made structure. These are all sightings from top officials, very high-up people. In 1974, and they're all various times. Al Chappelle was the photographer on an Air Force F-4 Recon mission on Mount, it's hard to read because it's very small, over Mount Ararat to more closely examine the artifact allegedly noted on satellite photos. The film was turned over to the Air Force for analysis. He described what he saw as a dark foreign object 2/3 of the way up the mountain near a gorge. It was oblong and partially buried in the ice glacier. And keep in mind too, some of it may be available at other times than others, depending on, the ice glacier. Obviously, that would cover some of it. But a former Air Force DC-3 pilot dropping freight in eastern Turkey for other CIA in the early 1960s saw it along with several other pilots flying missions for the CIA. He says the CIA and Air Force are well aware of the wooden barge on Mount Ararat, and pictures were probably turned over to these agencies. In 1974, retired Air Force Colonel Walter T. Brown Jr. was summoned to the CIA by Director Bill Colby and directed to disclose all his Ark knowledge, Ararat information, and Ark contents to Colby's assistant, who was overseeing a special Mount Ararat Noah's Ark project. It is also known by people familiar with the capability of U.S. defense photographic satellites and CIA radar penetrating satellite that these satellites have confirmed the Ark on Mount Ararat. Now, these are all the claims of why people are asking for the information, which brings up some very serious questions. Now, this was requested, let me go back up, in 1992, I believe is the date on the document, the 20th of July, 1992. So you can see that information there. But along with this information come these photos, which you cannot even tell what these photos are. And it's unclear as to if these are the photos released by the government or if it's from that agency. It's not too clear. They just kind of have them attached on here, which I would assume maybe these have been released or approved for release in 2002. But here's just some more of these photos. And as you can tell, you can't tell anything from them. But let's just scroll through some of these. Here's more. You know, is it that they're doing this on purpose where we can't tell anything? I don't know. All I know is you can't really tell a lot through these images. And the great part is later on we do have clear images, but we'll get to that in just a sec. Now here is another request, and this request was on the 13th of May 1974, where DCI Colby sent a letter to this agency asking for the information. And as you can see down here, wherever it was, okay, the agency legislative liaison staff said that several U2 photos dated to 1957 were available, but were still classified as confidential. Again, there's that. Now here's the last thing, and this is just again another request in which the CIA denies. But now let me open a file by the DIA. All right, so here's the document we just read through, but as it turns out, the CIA didn't have it, but the DIA does. I guess the appropriate title would have been DIA documents for this photo, but it's kind of both. You have a CIA request and DIA documents. But here they actually turn in photos taken in 1949 of Mount Ararat. Let's check these out. All right, so here are your photos. Now, these are the ones that the DIA coughed up. The CIA has yet to admit or cough up any of their photos, despite the fact that CIA personnel and Air Force and military personnel are claiming that they have it. But here are some of the photos. Could this be an area? I don't know. It's hard to say. But this is something that looks a little promising, you know, for Noah's Ark, you know, maybe even somewhere in here. But unless actual excavations are done, which are rather difficult in the area, you know, you're not going to know with certainty. Again, there's that one area, another area over here. But these are pretty interesting photos that I have not seen before. But these were given to us by the DIA, finally. And I believe I'm going to have to double check on the date that they released these because I'm unsure at this time. But those are all the photos. There's 7 of them total. But that's of your Mount Ararat. And again, I think the most promising one right here, or maybe even over here. But whether or not it's it, we'll never know. All right, so there you have it. The DIA gave us some photos. The CIA is still keeping theirs confidential. And NASA's also got some photos. I didn't see much in theirs, but here is the NASA photo of Mount Ararat. Kind of interesting, but hard to, you know, tell. Yeah, maybe anything from that, maybe here. And it's hard to say, you know, to pin down the locations of it, but you can find some interesting stuff. That said, I want to go to one other thing. And this is the last thing I want to show you. It says, has Noah's Ark been discovered? Or it has been discovered. And this is on viewzone.com. And I'm going to leave a link to this if you guys want to read up. There is also an additional discovery that a Turkish army captain found a possible location. And here's the photo I showed you in the beginning that was taken in 1960. And it was published in Life magazine. I believe that this is not on Mount Ararat, but in another area. And this is another just cool, unique piece that could be another location for the ark that, you might find interesting. But I'll leave a link to this. They talk about some of the visual evidence of it and what it could be. And as you can see, we're not going to see the boat nowadays because it's been years, thousands of years since the ark has landed. But we can look for things like artifacts and things that could ring bells for us. But I did find this interesting on the ark as well. Here's some things that they found, but all the different locations, it could be Mount Ararat is where the Bible kind of says it's around, but this is a speculated area as well. Anyhow, I wanted to bring you guys the latest. This is Lisa Haven signing off.